So the DJI Neo 2 has been out for a while now, and if we talk strictly in terms of value, the Neo 2 is very hard to beat. Depending on where you live, the price will vary, but for this price range, you get a drone that can fly, record video, track subjects, understand gestures, respond to motion control, and even perform hand takeoff and hand landing. On paper, it feels like you're getting a lot of DJI's ecosystem squeezed into the smallest airframe they make, but the cost of this value is that you don't get a complete experience in every area. Some modes are cut down. Normal flying can't always use the ultra-wide lens. Gesture shooting cannot record in 4K at 60 frames per second. Certain control methods don't unlock the full frame rate options. Whether these trade-offs are fine for you or not basically decides if the Neo series fits how you actually want to fly. Before we get into the tests, let's quickly place the Neo 2 inside DJI's lineup so everything that follows makes sense. You can think of DJI's drones as a vertical ladder. For aerial photography, above the Neo series you have the mini drones, then the Air series, then the Mavic lineup. For follow cam and action style use, above Neo you have the Flip. For FPV style flying, above Neo you have the Avatar and the DJI FPV. Some functions overlap, but each series is tuned around its main job. Minis and Mavics for stable aerial filming, Flip for following subjects, and Avatar-style drones for immersive FPV. Neo 2 sits at the bottom of that structure as DJI's cheapest drone. It's not really built for longtime pilots, it's mainly for beginners picking up their first DJI drone and figuring out what kind of flying they enjoy. Once you see the Neo 2 as an entry door into the rest of the ecosystem, most of its design and its compromises start to make sense. Compared with the first Neo, the Neo 2 does improve basic flight performance. Its maximum climb speed goes from around 3 meters per second to about 5 meters per second, and forward speed rises from roughly 8 meters per second to around 12 meters per second. In normal flight, you can feel that it is more responsive than the first generation. But even with that, the Neo series is still below the Mini series in terms of power. It can't match a Mini's acceleration or braking. In an 8 meters per second braking test, both Neo 1 and Neo 2 need similar distance to stop, while a Mini 3 or Mini 4 Pro can almost lock up and stop in place. You really notice this in wind. On paper, Neo 2 and some Mini models both say level 5 wind resistance, but they do not behave the same at all. Like DJI, because of its short propellers and weaker propulsion system, the Neo 2 has to lean very aggressively just to hold position, which burns battery and cuts into safe range. That shows up directly in pullback distance. In similar wind, at around 60 meters altitude, the Neo 2 might only manage something like 2,000 meters before it struggles, sitting at the bottom of the pack and even doing worse than the original Neo 1. So if you see the return to home warning on a Neo 2, don't play games with it. Its prediction is fairly accurate. If you keep flying out, for example, to around 2,500 meters, like in my test, there is a real chance it simply won't make it back. The video transmission system isn't the limit here. The real limits are power, battery life, and wind performance. Because many people will buy the Neo 2 without a remote controller, phone-only flying is important. Using an iPhone 13 Pro, which is known for strong signal, the Neo 2 reached roughly 230 meters before the control link started to fall apart. Other phones may be a bit better or worse, but this gives you a realistic idea. Video transmission itself is fine at that distance. The bigger issue is how you actually control the drone. Sliding your fingers on glass just isn't a good way to fly. There's no physical feedback, no resistance, no natural center point. Fine adjustments are hard, and because you never feel fully in control, you fly slower and more cautiously. That's why, even though the RCN3 controller isn't as nice as the RC2 or RC Pro 2, it is still a big upgrade over pure phone control. Being able to rest your thumbs on real sticks and feel every small correction makes a huge difference. The stick feel on RCN3 is not amazing, but it's still far better than flying on a touchscreen. Due to changes in the propeller design, the Neo 2 is a bit quieter than the original Neo. Recorded with the same microphone, the tone is a little softer and less sharp, though you can still clearly tell it's a small drone. Battery life is where you really have to be realistic. The official rating is around 19 minutes, but once you include takeoff, maneuvers, and a safe return margin, the true usable time is closer to around 10 minutes. For simple tracking shots, walking, running, or cycling, 3 batteries feel okay. But if you want to do more cinematic flying or treat it like a mini FPV drone, those 10 minutes disappear quickly and 3 batteries feel like the bare minimum. The upside is charging speed. The hub supports up to roughly 20 volts at 5 amperes. Paired with a 100-watt power delivery charger, it charges at full speed, and all 3 batteries can go from low to full in just over half an hour. That's very fast compared with larger drones that can feel like they take ages to charge. With its 2-axis gimbal and 1/2-inch sensor, the Neo 2 delivers a clearly better image than the first Neo. In daylight, the footage looks decent for a drone this small. The main weakness is dynamic range. Bright skies can blow out and look white quite easily, but color tuning is pleasant, and on a phone screen, the image does not immediately scream cheap drone. Thanks to that color work, the Neo 2's daylight image can even look slightly better than the Mini 2 in some scenes, though the difference isn't dramatic. What is impressive is the recording spec. With a remote or with goggles and joystick, you can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second or 4K at 100 frames per second. At 100 frames per second, it records at full speed, and you can later turn that into 1.6 times or 3.3 times slow motion in editing. Gesture shooting is more limited. In gesture mode, you only get 4K at 30 frames per second. With short shutter speeds and bright light, that often looks choppy. If DJI ever lets gesture mode shoot 60 frames per second, it would help a lot, but since it wasn't there at launch, it's probably not coming. At night, expectations should stay low. With this sensor size and price, and with so many features aimed at convenience, night footage is noisy and not something you would use in a serious project. The good part is that the drone still holds position reliably and doesn't constantly drop into attitude mode, so at least its basic flying at night is stable. Stabilization limits and missing advanced modes because the Neo 2 has only a 2-axis gimbal. The yaw axis is not stabilized. When you pan or when wind hits from the side, you see small jitters in the footage, especially compared with 3-axis mini drones. To hide noise in low light, the image processing tends to push the picture darker, which makes the grain less obvious but doesn't change the fact that the small sensor is limited. Without yaw stabilization, the footage never reaches that really smooth cinematic look you get from DJI's higher-end camera drones. On top of that, several advanced shooting modes are missing entirely. There is no time-lapse, no waypoint missions, and no HLG or D-Log-M color profile. Because of that, there is not much point directly comparing its image to a Mini 4 Pro or Mini 5 Pro. Those machines are built for serious image control. Neo 2 is built for simple, fun flying. Even so, you can put together nice, short edits with it. It's light, playful, and easy to carry, which makes you want to actually go out and fly it. The most fun feature of the Neo 2 is gesture control. So raise your hand, wait for the front light to turn blue, and the drone switches into gesture mode. From there, you can start tracking, adjust distance, and tweak framing without touching a controller. Gesture control works together with the obstacle sensors. In open areas, it follows your movements quite confidently. In more complex environments, it becomes more cautious and tends to follow from behind. Similar to how the Mini series behaves, there is also a focus mode where the drone itself does not move and only the gimbal keeps the subject framed. In that case, gestures are the only way to change distance or angle. The obstacle sensing stays active, but it's still weaker than the dual camera systems on DJI's higher-end models. Palm landing is the nicest little extra. In gesture mode or phone control mode, once the Neo 2 recognizes your palm, it lights blue, slides over your hand, and slowly lands into your palm. If you are using a traditional controller or goggles and you put a hand under the drone while it is landing, It will also try to move towards the palm, but it doesn't know who the owner is, so it can land on anyone's hand. With motion controller or FPV flying, the drone only makes small corrections in landing, so it won't always nail the center of your hand. And if you're in goggles, you can't see your hand directly, so catching it is harder. Still, when it works, it feels very cool and surprisingly reliable. You can fly the Neo 2 entirely with a smartphone. In manual stick mode, you can hold the phone horizontally, but most intelligent modes only run in portrait orientation. The interface is simple and easy to read, although some screens use a light theme and others drop back to the classic dark DJI Fly look. Voice control is still here. You say the wake phrase, then a very specific command. Because there is no advanced language understanding, you have to get the phrase exactly right or nothing happens. With gesture control working this well, voice control ends up being something you rarely use. The small screen on the drone's body is more useful. You can start certain smart modes, switch templates, and adjust some settings using short and long presses on the side button. The templates on the body are the same ones you set up in the phone app, and loading all of them makes sure no feature is missing when you are away from your phone. One small limitation is in the smart selfie modes. If you change the framing directly on the drone, you need to go back to the phone to restore multiple distance presets. It is not a big problem, but it's there. All the classic one-tap cinematic moves are here. Droney, rocket, helix, circle, and so on. They work like they do on other DJI drones. Because the gimbal is only 2-axis, sideways movement can look a bit jittery, but for casual use the shots still look fine. There's also a cut-down MasterShots mode. The working area is much smaller than on Mini or Mavic, and the drone moves less aggressively through its pre-planned path. That's mainly because of its lower power and shorter props. Although DJI markets omnidirectional obstacle sensing, in real use it feels like light assistance, not a full safety net. In simple spaces it brakes well when something appears in front of it. In busy areas with trees and poles, it is nowhere close to the dual camera systems on flagship drones. One-tap shots can still fly you into trouble if you are not watching, so these modes are best used in open areas. FPV flying with motion controllers and manual mode. On current firmware version 0400, the Neo 2 supports both the RC Motion 3 controller and the FPV controller 3. With RC Motion 3, flying feels intuitive and almost like a game. In normal mode, obstacle sensing is active and the drone will brake when it sees something ahead. Earlier versions reportedly had more options, but now it basically just stops instead of trying to go around obstacles. Like if you enable drift or high speed modes, obstacle sensing turns off completely. That sounds risky, but for FPV style flying, it is actually needed. Like with avoidance turned on, your speed is limited by how close you are to objects, which makes flying through trees painfully slow. To get that fast-flowing FPV feeling, you need avoidance off, and you rely on your own control. Using the FPV controller 3 in full manual mode is more mixed. The Neo 2 has a larger body, but the motors are not especially strong, so it doesn't feel like a true FPV quad. You can fly loops and more advanced lines, but at the top of a loop it tends to wobble, and at high speed you sometimes feel a little instability. The flight controller itself is good. If you start to lose control, switching back into sport mode in an open area usually saves it. Overall, Neo 2 is at its best with RC Motion 3 for casual FPV flavor, not as a serious manual FPV platform. Neo 2 works with RCN2, RCN3, and RC2 controllers. Most kits include RCN3. On paper it has about half the battery capacity of RCN2, but in practice that doesn't matter much. Because each Neo 2 battery only gives you around 10 minutes of flying, the controller's battery is never the limiting factor, even if you leave phone charging turned on. The bigger difference is how the sticks feel. RCN3 uses simpler potentiometer sticks that feel softer and less precise. RC2 has dual spring sticks that are tighter and give you better fine control. You really notice this when you are trying to frame shots smoothly or when you are using one drone to film another in the air. Some people point out that a modern phone on RCN3 has more processing power than the older chips in RC2 or RC Pro 2. That might be true, but in actual flying, the screen quality, setup convenience, and stick feel matter far more than raw benchmarks. For data transfer, DJI clearly expects Neo users to send footage straight to their phones. Wireless quick transfer can reach close to 80 megabytes per second. Wired transfer from the drone's USB port is only around 40 megabytes per second and doesn't use full USB 3 speed. For a product sold on fast, simple sharing, a faster wired option would have made sense, but this is one of the compromises. Neo 2 doesn't push a lot of advanced accessories. There are no official neutral density filters, and most buyers probably don't care about locking in perfect shutter speeds. They care more about portability and quick fun, which the drone delivers. Where it feels weak is storage and carrying. There is no ideal official bag that holds the drone, G3 goggles, motion controller, and FPV controller all together. With Neo 1, some people use the Mini 5 Pro box as a hacky case. Neo 2 is a bit bigger, so that no longer works. The shoulder bag option is also not great. If you are traveling or cycling, a compact backpack would suit this kind of drone better. Final verdict, who is the Neo 2 for? When you add everything up, the Neo 2 is clearly built on a stack of small compromises. Flight time is short, wind resistance is limited compared with the Mini series, the gimbal is only 2-axis, so footage is never as smooth as a 3-axis system. The camera struggles with dynamic range and low light, advanced modes like time-lapse and waypoints are missing, and obstacle avoidance is much weaker than on DJI's higher-end drones. Even the controllers and data transfer hardware have cutbacks, and yet it is still a very enjoyable drone. It offers things no other DJI drone in this price range really does. Gesture control that actually works, palm takeoff and landing, and motion controller FPV flying that is simply fun. It's small, easy to grab on the way out, and it lets beginners taste almost every style of flying DJI makes. That is why value depends so much on what you need. If you don't care about log profiles, waypoints, or perfect image quality, the Neo 2 can feel like a great deal. If you do care about those things, the compromises will bother you on every flight. So the simple way to see it is this. As a first drone or as a fun experimental drone for casual flying and gesture-based tracking, the Neo 2 is excellent. As a main camera drone for important projects or professional work, it isn't the right tool. Alright, that's everything we know about the Neo 2 for now. Subscribe to the channel so you're the first to see new tests, updates, and comparisons as soon as they drop. Thank you for watching till the end. I will see you in the next one. Peace.